In the first sacred hours of my honeymoon, a chilling text from my stepfather revealed he was watching us through hidden eyes. And the trap we laid for him would turn his sick fantasy into his ultimate downfall. Good evening, everyone. Welcome truly to my little corner of the world. I'm so glad you're here. Please come in, settle down. This space is as much yours as it is mine. My name is Eleanor Vance. I'm 73 years young, and my home is here in the quiet, rolling hills of Eureka Springs, a stone's throw from the historic Healing Springs themselves. I was born and raised in this very town, and after a lifetime of journeys, I returned to its gentle embrace to find my peace. You know what I'm doing right now as I speak to you? I'm in my sunny kitchen, stirring a batch of my famous spiced apple butter. The scent of cinnamon and slow-cooked apples is weaving through the rooms, clinging to the curtains, making the very air taste like home. I'm using my great aunt's old brass pot, the wooden spoon tapping a familiar, comforting rhythm against its sides. I learned this recipe at my grandmother's elbow, a small girl standing on a crate to see the stove. "Watch closely, Ellie," she'd say. True nourishment comes from knowing how to create it with your own two hands. After I retired, I began selling these jars of apple butter. Not out of necessity, thank goodness, but for the joy of it, for the connection. Every Friday, my kitchen transforms. Folks travel from neighboring towns just to pick up a jar and share a few moments of conversation. I wrap each one with care, tie a gingham cloth over the lid, and send it off with a full heart. My grandchildren adore helping. They sit at the table, carefully placing the labels we print together. My home is modest but filled with warmth. Ferns on the porch, quilts I've stitched draped over chairs, a well-loved sofa that bears the imprint of many happy leaps. I wouldn't change a thing. On the mantel, photographs tell our story. My 3 children, my 8 grandchildren, and my husband, James, who has stood beside me for over 5 decades. It is a good life. A peaceful life, hard one. But before I go any further, if you're enjoying our time together, would you do me a kindness? Tap that like button below for me, and subscribe to Winds of Thought. Click the bell so you won't miss the stories I have yet to tell. I promise you they're worth hearing. And tell me in the comments, where in the world are you listening from? What little town or city are you tuning in from? And what's the hour for you? Is it the quiet of early morning, the busy hum of afternoon, or the deep calm of night? I read every single comment. It fills me with such happiness to know there are souls from all over taking time to sit with me. Let's weave a chain of friendship that spans miles and oceans. Now, my dears, I must share a story I've carried for most of my life. A tale that begins in my youth, when I was 23 and preparing to marry the love of my life. It's a story about shattered trust, about a moment of pure joy twisted into a nightmare. But it is also a testament to the quiet power of a clever mind and how the hunted can become the hunter. To understand, we must go back to the beginning, to when I was just a girl here in Eureka Springs. My father was Samuel Vance, a carpenter with broad shoulders and hands always marked by honest work. He built beautiful gazebos and verandas for the grand hotels here. We lived in a snug, 3-room cottage behind the old chapel. I can still recall the smell of sawdust on his flannel shirt, the way he'd swing me up into his arms even when weary, his laughter booming through our small home. I was only 8 when a beam gave way on a job site. It was an autumn afternoon in 1961. My mother, Clara, was widowed at 34 with 3 young children, my older sister, Marion, aged 12, myself, and my baby brother, Thomas, just 5. Our little house had floorboards that sang when you walked on them, a roof that drummed with summer rain, and a kitchen stove we fed with wood each dawn. We had a patch of garden out back where Mama grew beans, squash, and rosemary. A crabapple tree stood sentinel, and beneath its branches, we children played our games, drawing hopscotch squares in the dust with chalk. Mama was a milliner. After Papa died, she turned our front parlor into her workshop. She bought a second-hand hat block and began crafting beautiful hats for the ladies of the town. I'd sit on the rug, watching her skilled hands shape felt and silk, the whisper of her work lulling me. My sister helped by looking after Thomas and starting supper, while Mama worked from first light until long after dark, her fingertips often pricked by pins. Life was lean, my dears, but it was an honest leanness. We had beans, cornbread, and eggs from our neighbors' chickens. Sometimes meat was a Sunday luxury, but we had love. We had each other. I attended the local school, came home for lunch, and in the afternoons I'd help Mama sort ribbons and feathers because her eyes grew tired. Evenings, we'd sit on the porch steps, watching the world go by, neighbors strolling, the evening trolley bell ringing, families heading to vespers. I had my circle of friends, Lydia, Bate, and June, and we'd play make-believe in the town square with our cloth dolls. On a Sunday in 1964, when I was 11, my mother came home from morning service with a man walking beside her. She had a new, shy smile. "Children," she said, "this is Mr. Lawrence Finch. He's an architect. He knew your father from a project in town." Lawrence was a tall, precise man, always in a pressed suit, hair neatly combed. He drove a sleek, cream-colored sedan that he parked right outside our cottage, a sight that drew curious looks from the whole street. He bent down, offered me a peppermint, and said in a smooth, deep voice, "You must be a leaner, your mother speaks of you often." At first, it felt strange. Our grief for Papa was still a fresh wound, and suddenly this man appeared every week, taking us for sodas, bringing small gifts. But Mama seemed lighter. She hummed while she worked, and for the first time since Papa left us, I saw her pin a fresh flower to her dress. Marion was wary. "He showed up awfully fast, Ellie," she'd whisper. "What does he want?" But I was a child. I wanted to see my mother smile again, and Lawrence was always courteous, always generous. 6 months later, they married in a simple ceremony at the chapel. Lawrence moved into our cottage, but we didn't stay there long. He declared he would now provide properly for his family, and 2 months later we moved to a substantial house on the west side, near the Crescent Hotel, an area where the well-to-do lived. The house had 5 rooms, an indoor bathroom with a proper tub, a separate dining room, and a manicured lawn. It was a different universe. Lawrence enrolled Marion and me in a private academy. He bought us new wardrobes, proper leather shoes, fine stationery. Mama stopped her hat making and became a homemaker. He even hired a woman to come and clean. On the surface, it was a fairy tale. The struggling family rescued by a Prince Charming, but inside those walls, slowly, I began to notice shifts. Lawrence was a man who needed control. He decided everything: what Mama would wear, what we ate for dinner, which radio programs we listened to. He never shouted, never raised a hand, but he had a way of speaking, a calm, low voice that felt like a threat. "Clara, that neckline is unsuitable for a wife. Go change. Eleanor, young ladies of standing do not linger outside past 7. Come inside this instant." My once resolute mother seemed to shrink, to grow quiet. Marion left home the day she turned 18, moving to stay with an uncle in Fayetteville, visiting rarely. And I grew up in that beautiful, chilly house, attending the expensive school, wearing fine clothes, yet sensing a profound wrongness I couldn't name. The years passed, and I grew into a young woman within those walls. I graduated from the academy in 1972, and Lawrence had it all mapped out. I would study literature at the State Teachers College. "You'll be an educator, Eleanor," he said with a smile that never touched his eyes. "A respectable vocation for a young lady." My mother agreed silently, always nodding. But it was at college that I discovered a world beyond his control, and I met James. James Abbott was a lanky young man with wire-rimmed glasses, studying mathematics and working part-time at a shop that repaired televisions and radios. We collided in the college library one rainy October afternoon. My armful of books tumbled to the floor, and he was there in an instant, gathering them up. "Allow me," he said softly. When I looked into his kind eyes, something inside me shifted. We began to meet for coffee. Tell me about transistors and circuits. About the coming age of computers. I understood only half of it, but I adored his passion, the light in his eyes when he explained. James came from a humble background, his father a machinist, and that made me feel connected to my own roots, to the memory of my father, Samuel. 4 months later, he asked me to be his girlfriend by the old college fountain, and I said yes with my whole heart. But then came the challenge. I had to tell Lawrence. I remember the night I brought James home for supper. Mama made a roast with all the trimmings. James arrived, nervous but earnest, with a bunch of daisies for my mother. Lawrence sat at the head of the table, carving the meat slowly, asking questions that sounded polite but were laced with judgment. "So, young man, does your family hold any property?" James answered honestly. "No, sir. My father works at the plant. We rent our home." A heavy quiet fell. Lawrence dabbed his mouth with a napkin, looked at me with that familiar, disapproving gaze, and smiled thinly. "I see. A diligent fellow, commendable." Later, after James had gone, Lawrence called me into his study, a room filled with drafting tables and blueprints where no one entered without permission. He stood with his back to me, hands clasped. "Eleanor, you know I only desire the best for you. I've raised you, provided your education, your comforts." I stood by the door, heart hammering. "I know, Lawrence, and I am grateful." He turned, and his eyes held a coldness that chilled my blood. "That boy has no prospects, no assets. You deserve better. You deserve your station." But I loved James, and for the first time I pushed back. "I am going to continue seeing him, with or without your blessing. I am an adult." I saw his jaw tighten. He took 2 steps closer, so close I could smell his aftershave, and whispered, "You are making a grave error, girl, but you will learn." The following 2 years were a steady courtship. James graduated and secured a good position with the local telephone company. I graduated and had a teaching post waiting. In the spring of 1975, James formally proposed in his parents' parlor, with my mother present. It was heartfelt and perfect. We planned a modest wedding for August at the chapel. That's when Lawrence's demeanor transformed completely. Suddenly, he was the supportive future father-in-law. He began smiling at James, calling him son, offering assistance. "I may have been harsh," he said one evening. "A father protects his daughter, but I see this is genuine. Let me help." James was relieved. "See, Ellie, he's a good man at heart." But a knot of dread tightened in my stomach. I had known Lawrence for 13 years. He did not change overnight. Yet I said nothing, not wanting to shadow James's happiness. 3 weeks before the wedding, Lawrence made his offer. At the dinner table, he announced, "Eleanor, James, I wish to give you a wedding gift. I own a secluded lakeside cottage in the Ozarks. It is private, fully furnished. I want you to spend your honeymoon there. A full week, all expenses covered. It's the least I can do." James was stunned. "Sir, that's too generous. We couldn't." Lawrence raised a hand. "I insist. It's all arranged. Secluded, beautiful, with a stone fireplace. You deserve a proper beginning." He looked at me, and I swear, my dears, I saw a glint in his eye that made my skin crawl. But how could I refuse? How could I explain my deep mistrust of the man who had clothed and educated me, who was now being so magnanimous? My mother clasped her hands in delight. "How wonderful!" James squeezed my hand under the table, his face alight. I forced a smile, but inside, a silent alarm screamed. Lawrence never gave anything without expecting something in return. As he described the cottage, master bedroom with a view, modern bathroom, a fully stocked kitchen, that glint in his eyes sharpened. I recalled the times he'd accidentally walked in while I was changing, his eyes lingering just a moment too long. I swallowed my fear. I was young, in love, about to be married. What could possibly be wrong with accepting a gift? "We accept, Lawrence. Thank you," I said, my voice steady. He raised his glass. "To the newlyweds, may your honeymoon be memorable." He said the word memorable with a weight that felt ominous. The wedding was beautiful. A Saturday in August 1975. Sunlight streamed through the chapel's stained glass. When I walked in on Thomas's arm, I saw James waiting, his smile full of love, and I thought, nothing can touch us now. Lawrence sat in the front pew, impeccable in a navy suit. He gave me a smile that, in that moment, I mistook for pride. The reception was joyful. We said our goodbyes as dusk fell and drove off in James's old truck, tin cans rattling behind us. Lawrence came to the window, pressed the cottage key into James's palm, and grasped my hand. "Savor every moment," he said, his grip tight. The drive was long and winding, deep into the forested hills. When we arrived, the cottage was indeed beautiful, cedar and fieldstone perched above a glassy lake utterly isolated. It smelled of pine and damp earth. "It's perfect," I breathed. James carried me over the threshold. Inside, everything was new and expensive. And the bedroom. It was spacious, with a large bed, nightstands, a dresser mirror, and a modern smoke detector on the ceiling with a tiny, steady red light. We fixed a simple supper, found a bottle of wine in the icebox with a note. "For the happy couple." LF, we ate by the fire, talking and laughing, nerves and excitement mingling. The mantel clock chimed 11 as we finally went to the bedroom. I had a special lace nightdress. James turned on a bedside lamp, casting a soft glow. We kissed slowly, tenderly, beginning this new chapter. And then, my dears, then came the horror. James's company-issued pager, a bulky new device few people had, buzzed insistently on the nightstand. Once, twice, 3 times, he paused. "Who on earth?" I picked it up. The first message displayed from an unknown number, but the text, it froze the blood in my veins. "The lace is quite becoming, Alina. Don't stop on my account. I'm enjoying the view." I couldn't breathe. I thrust the device at James, my hand trembling violently. He read it, his face draining of color. "He's watching." "How? Where?" A second message arrived. "The fireplace light is so romantic. Proceed." I crumpled onto the bed, pulling the blanket over me, tears of pure violation and terror bursting forth. James was on his feet, a man possessed, scanning the room. "Where is it? Where's the camera?" He found the first one inside the smoke detector, dragged a chair, climbed up, and tore it from the ceiling, a small, black, sinister eye. He hurled it to the floor and stomped it to pieces. We searched like mad people. We found another behind the dresser mirror, a 2-way glass. Another concealed within the base of the bedside lamp. And in the bathroom, God, in the bathroom, one was hidden in the vent above the shower. I was sick. I ran to the toilet and retched until I was empty. James held me on the cold tile floor as we wept. I felt defiled, stripped bare. This sacred beginning had been turned into a perverse spectacle. "We're leaving," James said, voice raw. "We're going to the police. Now." But I gripped his arm. In the eye of that storm of horror, a crystal-clear thought emerged. If we fled, Lawrence would have time to destroy evidence. He was wealthy, connected. He would claim we were unstable, lying. He would walk away clean, free to do this again. "No," I said, wiping my mouth. My voice was suddenly steady. "We're not running." James stared at me. "Alina, we can't stay here." "He thinks we'll panic and flee," I said, a cold anger rising to smother my fear. "He thinks he's won. We're going to give him exactly what he wants. A show, and it will be the last one he ever sees." We spent that night awake, huddled on the living room floor far from the violated bedroom. James had ripped out the cameras we'd found, 4 in total, but the entire space now felt like a prison of eyes. I shivered under a blanket, a deep, soul-cold chill. James paced, his fists clenched, jaw working. The floorboards groaned under his frantic steps. "I should have known," he rasped. "The gift was too perfect. I should have seen it." "Stop," I commanded, my voice firm in the quiet. "His evil is not our failure. We trusted because we are decent people. But now we see him, and now we will make him pay." I stood, went to the window. Outside was the profound blackness of the wilderness. But in that darkness, a plan began to form piece by piece with terrifying clarity. He was watching now. That meant a live feed. The cameras weren't just recording, they were transmitting. James, with his technical mind, latched onto the concrete problem. There has to be a receiver. A computer or a server. To transmit live video, this is advanced tech. He must have connections. He examined the wreckage of a camera. This is imported, cutting-edge, arrogant man. He probably didn't even secure his network properly. "Can you trace it?" I asked. James looked at me, and I saw the engineer in him engage. "I have tools in the truck. I can try." While James went to get his equipment, I was alone. The full weight of the violation crashed down. I sat on the cold floor and wept, not the terrified sobs from before, but tears of grief for the trust I had given, for the innocence shattered. This was a violation of the soul itself. Why me? What had I done? Memories I had rationalized for years now paraded before me. The accidental intrusions, the too tight clothes he bought, the probing questions. How had I been so blind? I thought of calling the police right then and letting it go. But I remembered Lawrence dining with the sheriff, playing golf with the judge. He would twist it. He would ruin us. No, I stood up, wiping my face. We would be smarter. James returned with a case of gear. He set up on the floor, wires and blinking devices. Looking for the local network signal, got it. Lakeside retreat. Strong signal. It's here in the house. He worked for what felt like an eternity, typing, muttering about IP addresses and gateways. As a gray dawn lightened the sky, he went still. He looked at me, his expression a mix of triumph and revulsion. I found it. The signal is routing to an address, 1427 Magnolia Lane, Eureka Springs. My heart seized. That was his house. That was where my mother was. He's there now, James confirmed, checking a readout. The data stream is active. He's watching. I felt a new wave of nausea, but with it, iron resolve. He was sitting in his study, waiting for the show to resume. And that's when the final piece of the plan clicked into place. James, I said slowly, that prototype video phone your company is testing, is it in the truck? He nodded, confused. It is. Why? What if, I said, the words coming fast, we call my mother right now? What if we use that phone to show her what's happening? What if she walks in on him, watching us live? James processed it. You want to call her now? Wake her up. He's there alone in the study. She's in her bedroom. If we wake her, show her the feed, explain she can catch him in the act, red-handed. But what if she doesn't believe us? She will, I said with certainty, because she will see her daughter on his computer screen. There is no lying your way out of that. A heavy silence. Then James nodded. I'll get the phone. While he was gone, I stood in the center of that room. The fear was still there, a living thing, but it was now joined by a fierce, burning power. We would turn his weapon against him. James returned with the clunky prototype, a large handset with a small screen and a lens. He powered it on. I picked up the cottage's landline, my finger trembling as I dialed my mother's number. It rang and rang. On the fifth ring, she answered, her voice thick with sleep and fear. Ellie, good heavens, what time is it? Are you all right? Mom, I said, forcing calm into my voice. Listen to me, I need you to trust me completely. What I'm about to show you will change everything, but you must be strong. Can you do that? I heard her sit up, the rustle of sheets. Ellie, you're frightening me. What happened? We're safe physically, but Mom, Lawrence. He put hidden cameras in the cottage, in the bedroom, the bathroom. He's watching us right now. A stunned silence. Then what, Ellie? That's impossible. Why would he? I have the cameras in my hand, Mom. James traced the signal. It's going to his study computer. He's there now watching. He sent us messages. My voice broke. He turned our honeymoon into a show for himself. I heard a muffled gasp, a sob choked back. No, it can't be. There must be some mistake. Mom, I cut in firm. There is no mistake, and I need your help to prove it. I need you to go to his study right now. He'll deny it, Ellie. He'll say you're hysterical. Not if you catch him. I'm going to make a video call to your new cell phone. You'll see the cameras. You'll see us here. And then you'll take that phone, open his door, and you'll see him watching his own stepdaughter. Can you be that strong? Another pause. I heard her bed creak as she stood. Her voice, when it came, was low and hard. Is he in there now? Yes, the transmission is live. Then call me. I'm going to catch him. James dialed her number on the video phone. In moments, her face appeared on the tiny screen, lit by her bedside lamp, eyes puffy but blazing with a newfound fire. Show me, she said. James panned the camera to the destroyed devices, then up to the ceiling fixture where one camera's red LED still winked in the shadows. My mother brought a hand to her mouth. Dear Lord, what have I let into our lives? It's not your fault, Mom, but you can end it now. We watched on the shaky video feed as she left her room, descended the stairs, and approached the study door. A line of light shone beneath it. She knocked firmly. Lawrence, open this door now. His irritated voice came through. Clara, it's the middle of the night. I'm working. Open it now. We heard a chair scrape, footsteps. The lock turned. He opened the door, robusque, face a mask of annoyance and sudden guilt. "What is the meaning of this?" My mother didn't answer. She pushed past him, the phone camera capturing the scene, his desk, his papers, and on a monitor, James and I live from the cottage living room. "What is this, Lawrence?" Her voice was deadly calm. He paled, moving to block the screen. It's a security feed for their protection in case of intruders." "Security," she screamed, the sound raw through the phone. "A security camera in their bedroom? Do you take me for a fool?" James aimed our phone at the still active camera, and my mother saw the direct, undeniable link on Lawrence's monitor. She turned and slapped him across the face with a crack that echoed. "Don't you ever touch me again, ever." She turned back to the phone. "Ellie, get out of there. Come home. I'm calling the police." "You can't," Lawrence roared, reaching for her. "This is my house. I'll ruin you." She held the phone away. "Your house, bought with the insurance money from Samuel you convinced me to invest. You are leaving, tonight." We saw the moment his arrogance shattered into panic. He knew he was caught. The police arrived within the hour. My mother had called them, keeping Lawrence confined to the study. She showed them the live feed, the recording on the video phone. An officer who knew Lawrence looked ill. "Mr. Finch, you'll need to come with us." He was taken in handcuffs. His equipment was seized. It was over. "Come home, my girl," my mother said, her voice finally breaking. "It's finished." And we did. We drove back as the sun fully rose, holding each other, silent, weeping, and strangely laughing through tears because we had won. 50 years have passed since that terrible night. I am 73. I came back to Eureka Springs and built this quiet, joyful life with James. We married properly 2 months later, honeymooned at a simple bed and breakfast. We had 3 children, built careers, welcomed grandchildren. The scars are there, but they no longer define me. Lawrence was convicted. He served time. My mother divorced him, reclaimed her life, and lived to be surrounded by love until she passed peacefully years later. I never saw or heard from him again. He is a ghost. The monster always banks on your silence. He never expects you to use his own tools to dismantle his world. My life now is my sanctuary. I make my apple butter. I tend my garden. I watch my grandchildren play on that same sofa. It is a common, beautiful life, and it is my victory. If you're facing a violation, if someone is stealing your peace, your safety, your right to privacy, hear me. You are not at fault. You are not alone. Speak. To someone you trust, to authorities. Gather your evidence. Use your clarity. One believing person can change everything. You can reclaim your story. And it can be beautiful. Now I need you. If this story resonated with you, if you believe in the power of speaking out, please tap that like button. Subscribe to Winds of Thought and ring the bell. There are so many more stories of resilience to share. And in the comments, I'd love for you to write just 2 words. I'm stronger. Let's build a chorus of strength together. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for listening. May you find peace and courage in your own journey. Good night. But the story, my dears, does not truly end there. A life is not a single night, no matter how terrible. A life is the tapestry woven from all the days that come after, the threads of healing, of rebuilding, of finding joy in the small, quiet moments that follow the storm. And that is the story I wish to tell you now, the story of what came next. For the trauma of that night was a deep wound, one that did not simply vanish with Lawrence's arrest. It lingered, a shadow in the corners of my mind, a flinch at sudden noises, a profound distrust of closed doors and quiet rooms. In the weeks and months that followed, James and I returned to Eureka Springs, but we did not simply return to our old lives. We had to build a new one, from the ground up, on foundations of trust we had to rediscover for ourselves. We moved into a small apartment above the local bookstore, a temporary space that smelled of old paper and fresh coffee. It was our sanctuary, a place where we could lock the door and know, with absolute certainty, that we were alone. James checked every corner, every electrical outlet, not out of paranoia, but out of a necessity we both understood. We needed to feel safe. We slept with the lights on for the first month. We held each other through nightmares that would jolt us awake in the dead of night, sweating and disoriented. I would dream of red lights blinking in the dark, of silent, watching eyes. James would dream of smashing cameras that multiplied as soon as he destroyed them. We learned to soothe each other, to whisper reassurances in the dark until our heartbeats slowed and sleep found us again. My mother, Clara, was our rock in those early days. She had filed for divorce immediately, a process that was its own kind of battle. Lawrence, even from his jail cell, fought it. He used every legal delay, every manipulation he could muster from afar. He claimed it was all a misunderstanding, that my mother was hysterical, influenced by a rebellious stepdaughter. But she stood firm. The evidence was undeniable. The video recording from that night, the seized equipment, the testimony of the police officers who had seen the live feed with their own eyes. Still, the process was draining. It required meetings with lawyers, court appearances, the reliving of the violation in sterile legal language. My mother aged during that year. New lines appeared on her face, but there was a new steel in her spine, too. She was no longer the quiet woman who deferred to her husband. She was a fighter, reclaiming her life, her home, her dignity. She sold the house on Magnolia Lane. It held too many ghosts, too many memories of control and fear. With the proceeds, she bought a small, cheerful bungalow on the south side of town, with a garden she could tend and a porch where she could sit and watch the world go by. She found a part-time job at the local library, a quiet place that suited her newfound peace. We visited her often, bringing meals, sitting with her in the evenings. Our relationship deepened in a way it never had before. We were no longer just mother and daughter. We were survivors, allies, two women who had looked into the same abyss and chosen to walk away from it together. James and I had our own legal journey. We pressed charges, of course. The district attorney's office took the case seriously, given the technological nature of the crime and the clear premeditation. The trial was set for the following spring. The prospect of facing Lawrence in a courtroom, of having to describe that night in detail to a room full of strangers, was a heavy weight. Our lawyer, a kind but no-nonsense woman named Mrs. Peabody, prepared us meticulously. She walked us through every question we might be asked, every tactic the defense might use. Lawrence's lawyer tried to paint him as a concerned stepfather, a man of means who had used cutting-edge technology to ensure the safety of his loved ones in a remote location. He tried to suggest that the messages were misinterpreted, that we had overreacted. But the evidence was too strong. The technical testimony from James about the signal tracing, the video recording from my mother's phone, the very design of the cameras, small, hidden, placed in intimate areas, all spoke of voyeurism, not security. The day I had to take the stand was one of the hardest of my life. I wore a simple, modest dress. James sat in the front row, his eyes locked on mine, giving me strength. Lawrence sat at the defense table in a suit, his posture perfect. He did not look at me. I took a deep breath, placed my hand on the Bible, and swore to tell the truth. And I did. I spoke of the messages, the discovery of the cameras, the feeling of violation. My voice shook at first, but as I spoke, as I looked at James and my mother in the gallery, it grew steadier. I was not telling a story of victimhood. I was bearing witness to a crime. When the defense attorney cross-examined me, trying to trip me up on minor details, to imply I was fabricating the story out of some long-held resentment, I held my ground. "No, sir," I said, my voice clear. "I am here because a man violated the most sacred trust and privacy of our marriage. I am here for the truth." I saw the jury watching me, their faces solemn. I knew then that we would be believed. James's testimony was masterful. He explained the technology in terms the jury could understand, drawing diagrams of how he traced the signal. He was calm, precise, and devastatingly factual. He presented the mangled remains of the cameras as evidence. The prosecution played the video recording from my mother's phone. Seeing it on a large screen in that formal room was surreal. There was my mother's shaky footage, Lawrence's guilty face, the undeniable proof on his computer monitor. A juror gasped. Lawrence's arrogant facade finally cracked. He looked down at the table, his shoulders slumping. Verdict came back quickly. Guilty on all counts, invasion of privacy, unlawful surveillance, and several other technical charges. The judge, in his sentencing remarks, called Lawrence's actions a profound and premeditated betrayal, a violation that strikes at the heart of what it means to feel safe in one's own home, in one's most intimate moments. He was sentenced to 8 years in a state penitentiary. There was no victory shout, no celebration in the courtroom, just a deep, collective exhale. It was over. The law had seen him for what he was. After the trial, James and I knew we needed to leave Eureka Springs for a little while. Not forever, but to breathe different air, to create new memories untainted by the recent past. We used the small savings we had and took a trip. Not a honeymoon. We would have that later on our own terms, but a journey. We drove south with no real destination in mind. We ended up in the Great Smoky Mountains, staying in a series of small, family-run cabins where we knew the owners by name. We hiked until our legs ached, cooked simple meals over campfires, and talked for hours about everything and nothing. We talked about our childhoods, our dreams, our fears. We talked about that night too, but not with the same raw terror. Now we could examine it, piece by piece, and marvel at our own resilience. We had been tested in the most horrible way, and we had not broken. We had bent, yes, but we had bent together, and in doing so, we had found a strength we never knew we possessed. It was on that trip, sitting by a rushing creek, the sound of the water washing over the stones, that James turned to me and said, "I want to marry you again." I looked at him, confused. "We are married, my love." He took my hand. "I know, but I want to marry the woman you are now, the woman who faced down a monster and won. I want to stand with her and promise her the future she deserves without any shadows from the past hanging over us." So we did. A few months after we returned home, we had a second, very small ceremony in my mother's new backyard, under the crabapple tree she had planted. Our closest friends were there, our family. I wore a simple yellow sundress. James wore his best shirt. My mother cried happy tears. We exchanged the same rings, but we wrote new vows, vows that spoke of partnership forged in fire, of trust rebuilt, of a love that was not naive but was fiercely protective and deeply knowing. That was our real beginning. Life began to find its rhythm. I started my teaching job that fall. Walking into that classroom of bright, curious fifth graders was a balm for my soul. Their energy, their innocence, their sheer belief in the goodness of the world was a daily reminder that light exists, and it is worth nurturing. James thrived at the telephone company, his technical skills and calm demeanor earning him rapid promotions. We saved every penny, dreaming of a home of our own. 2 years after the trial, we bought our house. It was an old but solid craftsman-style home on a tree-lined street, needing some love but full of potential. It had a big kitchen with a window overlooking the backyard, a fireplace in the living room, and 3 small bedrooms. Most importantly, it had a history we knew. It had belonged to an elderly couple who had raised their family there. A home filled with laughter and love, not secrets and surveillance. We painted every room ourselves, a labor of love that felt like a ritual of purification. We chose warm, cheerful colors. We planted a rose bush by the front steps. This house would be our sanctuary, a place where we could grow. Our first child, Samuel, was born in 1977. Holding him for the first time, feeling the overwhelming, terrifying love that comes with motherhood, I was struck by a new fear, the fear of the world for him. How could I protect this perfect, tiny person from all the darkness that existed? But then I looked at James, saw the same awe and determination in his eyes, and I knew we would do it together. We would build a home where he felt safe, loved, and respected. We would teach him about boundaries, about consent, about the dignity of every person. We would be the parents we had needed. Samuel was followed by our daughter, Clara, in 1979, and our youngest, Thomas, in 1982. Our family was complete. Parenting after trauma is its own journey. There were moments of hypervigilance. I would sometimes check on the children too often while they slept, my heart pounding with an irrational fear. James would be overly cautious about who babysat them. But we talked about these feelings, we supported each other, and we learned, slowly, to trust the world again because we were building a small, good part of it within our own walls. We made traditions. Friday night pizza, Sunday morning pancakes, bedtime stories that always ended with a hug and a whispered, "You are safe, you are loved." The years flowed like a river, sometimes calm, sometimes rushing. There were joys, school plays, little league games, teaching Clara to ride a bike, watching Thomas build elaborate block towers. There were sorrows, too. The passing of James's father, a scare when Samuel broke his arm, the normal anxieties of life. But through it all, the shadow of that one night grew smaller, more distant. It never vanished entirely. Trauma leaves a fingerprint on the soul, but it ceased to be the defining feature of our landscape. It became a part of our history, a dark chapter we had closed. I taught for 30 years. I saw generations of children pass through my classroom. I tried to be for them the steady, kind presence every child deserves. I especially watched for the quiet ones, the ones who seemed to carry a weight. I wanted them to know that an adult could be trusted, that school could be a safe harbor. James eventually became a manager at the telecommunications company, helping to bring the very technology that had been used against us into homes for connection and good. We often marveled at the irony. My mother, Clara, lived a full and vibrant life in her bungalow. She became an avid gardener, her roses winning prizes at the county fair. She found a community at the library and a circle of friends who played bridge and took day trips together. She doted on her grandchildren, her love for them a pure, uncomplicated joy. She passed away in her sleep in 2004, at the age of 77, surrounded by photos of her family. Her funeral was not a somber affair, but a celebration of a life reclaimed. We told stories of her bravery, her resilience, her wonderful, stubborn spirit. She was my hero. As for Lawrence, I kept my vow. I never sought him out, never asked for news. I heard through the occasional town gossip that he served 6 years of his sentence, was released, and left the state. Some said he went to California, others to Florida. It didn't matter. He was a phantom, a lesson in the banality of evil, a man who chose to be a monster. He held no power over me, over my mother's memory, or over my family. His greatest punishment, I believe, was not the prison time, but the knowledge that he had been outsmarted, that his carefully constructed world of control and secrecy had been dismantled by the very people he sought to dominate. He was a small man, and we had proven him so. Now here I am, in my 70s. The frantic energy of young motherhood has given way to the deep, rich calm of grandmotherhood. My 8 grandchildren are the lights of my life. They tumble through this house, the same one James and I bought all those years ago, filling it with a noise and chaos that is the sweetest music. They help me in the kitchen, their small hands stirring the apple butter, just as I once stood on a crate for my grandmother. I tell them stories, but I have not yet told them this one. They will learn it in time, when they are older, as a story not of fear, but of strength. A story about how their Nana and Papa faced a great darkness and did not let it extinguish their light. James and I still sit on the porch in the evenings, holding hands. We don't talk as much as we used to, we don't need to. The silence between us is comfortable, filled with a lifetime of shared understanding. We watch the fireflies come out, listen to the crickets. We are at peace. This is the part of the story that is often left out, you see. The aftermath, the healing, the long, sometimes difficult but always worthwhile journey back to yourself. Society loves the dramatic climax, the discovery, the confrontation, the verdict. But the real story, the human story, is what happens in the quiet days that follow. It's in the choice to get out of bed each morning, to make the coffee, to kiss your spouse, to go to work, to laugh with a friend. It's in the slow rebuilding of trust, not just in others, but in your own judgment, in your own strength. It's in the decision to not let the violation become the cornerstone of your identity, but to let it be a scar, a reminder of a battle fought and survived, but not the sum total of who you are. I made that choice every single day. Some days it was easy. The sun would be shining, my children would be laughing, and the past felt like a distant, faintly remembered dream. Other days were harder. A certain smell, a particular look from a stranger, a news story about a similar crime could bring the old fear rising up, acrid in the back of my throat. On those days, I would practice what I now know is called grounding. I would focus on the feel of the wooden spoon in my hand as I stirred the apple butter, the sound of the simmering pot, the solid floor beneath my feet. I would remind myself, I am here, I am safe, I won. And I did win, not just in the courtroom, but in this kitchen, in this garden, in the arms of my husband, in the laughter of my grandchildren. I won a life, a simple, beautiful, ordinary life, and there is nothing more extraordinary than that. So to you who are listening, if you are in the midst of your own darkness, if you are carrying a violation that feels too heavy to bear, I want you to hear this. Your story does not end with the trauma. You are the author and you get to write the next chapters. They may be painful at first. There may be days when the words won't come, when the page stays blank. But slowly, with time, with support, with great kindness to yourself, you will begin to write again. You will write chapters of healing, of small triumphs, of rediscovered joy. You will write about the friend who believed you, the therapist who listened, the moment you laughed again and it didn't feel like a betrayal. You will write about setting a boundary and holding it. You will write about learning to trust your own instincts again. You will write about love in all its complicated, beautiful forms. Do not let anyone, especially the one who hurt you, convince you that your story is only about the harm they inflicted. It is not. It is about your resilience. It is about the incredible, unbreakable core of who you are that they could not touch, no matter what they did. That part of you is still there, waiting. Nurture it. Listen to it. Let it guide you forward. And please do not do this alone. My mother's belief was the catalyst for our justice. James's partnership was my anchor. Find your person. Find your people. It could be a family member, a friend, a support group, a helpline. Let someone else hold the light for a while when yours feels too dim. There is no shame in needing help. It is the bravest thing you can do. Technology, too, can be an ally. In our case, it was the weapon, but it was also the tool of our liberation. Today, there are so many resources available, ways to document, to connect, to find information and support. Use them. Let them empower you. Now, as I bring this long story to a close, the apple butter is done. The jars are lined up on the counter, their lids pinging as they seal, a sound of preservation, of things made safe to last. The evening sun slants through the window, painting the kitchen in gold. Soon, James will come in from the garden and we'll have a simple supper, the ordinary miracle of another day. Thank you for staying with me through this, for listening to an old woman's tale of long ago darkness and the enduring light that followed. By listening, you are part of that light. You are bearing witness, and in doing so, you help break the silence that predators rely upon. If this story has meant something to you, if it has given you a sliver of hope or a moment of feeling less alone, I would be so grateful if you would tap that like button. It tells me the story was worth telling. And please, subscribe to Winds of Thought. I share stories like this not to dwell on pain, but to illuminate the path out of it. There are so many voices of wisdom and recovery that deserve to be heard. In the comments, I asked you to write "I'm stronger." I hope you did, or that you will, because you are. Maybe you don't feel it yet, but the strength is there in the very fact that you are here, listening, seeking. Nurture that strength, protect it, let it grow. From my heart to yours, thank you. May your journey lead you to peace, to healing, and to a life that is truly, deeply your own. Good night, my dears. Good night.